Greetings, I'm Keith Klein, the host of the VentureFizz Podcast, where I interview the most fascinating people in the tech scene. This is episode 406, and today's guest is Bill Simmons, serial entrepreneur and co-founder of Orbit.me and DataXu. I'm going to use the cliché. Bill actually is a rocket scientist. His background is in aerospace engineering. He holds a PhD from MIT, and he has worked on 13 space missions. In addition, he was part of a major government competition for simulating options for space travel to Mars. His team simulated 35 billion possible options to generate 1,100 different Mars missions that were all feasible. This groundbreaking technology that leveraged big data, which we now recognize as AI and machine learning, launched his first company called DataXu in 2008. DataXu became a pioneer in the programmatic ad platform category and raised over $87 million in funding. The company scaled as a major player in the Boston tech scene and was acquired by Roku in 2019. Now, Bill is tackling a challenge that we all likely face with his new startup, Orbit.me. Information is scattered across texts, multiple email inboxes, LinkedIn, WhatsApp, and other social apps. It's pretty much impossible to keep track of all that matters. Orbit.me is a perfect use case for AI, organizing your scattered messages into orbits, which are dedicated spaces built around the real context of your life, like parenting, work, and other important matters. In this episode of our podcast, we cover lots of great topics, like a fascinating discussion about space travel, Mars missions, and the idea of data centers in space, Bill's background story, and the incredible research that led him from academia to entrepreneurship, the full life cycle story of DataXu from its MIT roots to becoming a major industry pioneer, all about Orbit.me and the powerful difference in building a native AI product today, how the role of a software engineer is rapidly evolving in the AI era, and so much more. Okay, quick side note, is your company hiring? If the answer is yes, then what are you doing to build up your company's employment brand? If you don't have a content strategy, then you're likely just flying under the radar. The good news is that we can help. A subscription to VentureFizz includes a content playbook for sharing all the details on your company, people, and culture. We leverage all formats of storytelling, including video, podcasting, employee profiles, and more. Reach out to info@venturefizz.com to get all the details. All right, without further ado, here's my interview with Bill. Bill, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Keith.
I'm excited to talk to you because I'm a historian of the Boston tech scene, and there's so many great companies that have been built. DataXu is one of them. So when I ran into you, I was like, Bill, we got to do the podcast because there's such an amazing story to be told there. And one of the fun facts about DataXu that I love is the kind of the foundational story and how that ties into your background, being that you were deeply involved in space missions and creating systems around that. So, just really mind-blowing type of stuff. So before we get into that story, I'm like, there's no way somebody spends that much time involved in creating systems for exploration of space and still isn't super interested in that world. So I thought this would be a perfect opportunity to talk to you about the current state of space travel and where things stand in terms of our potential travel to Mars.
Sure. Keith, great question. I think, if you really want to understand me at my core, I have always been a dreamer. I think I was always attracted to the space industry. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. I think my mother took me to Langley Space Center when I was 4, and that was the first time I'd even heard of the concept. And I was like, wow, this is so cool. And I was obsessed with it throughout my entire childhood. I think, what's happening right now with this big push towards Mars, what's really interesting about it is not necessarily that the Mars part, it's that the push towards Mars has to push the technology so far that the cost to go to space is between 100 and 1,000x cheaper than it was 20 years ago. And so now we've got people talking very seriously about launching in-space AI data centers that are using solar power to do trainings. Google, NVIDIA, I'm sure the Chinese are doing it too. A lot of these plans are coming to light because it turns out it's cheap enough now that you can launch an entire data center in space and you don't have to worry about cooling or power because you put up solar panels with no atmosphere, no blocking, no wind, no dust. You get perfect power. And if you need cooling, space is like 0 degrees Kelvin or like 2. It's like, so you just put your cooling fins towards deep space and you've got power, you've got cooling. And the other problem that needs to be solved is maintenance. And increasingly with AI, there's robots that do it. That was one of the biggest problems in space flight is that when something goes wrong, it's very expensive to fix. Well, if you have smart robots that can innovate, just like, with Claude Code or whatever, you can say, hey, I don't know what's going on, tell me. You can do that in space and have these robots go and, maintain the servers. It's super fascinating. I was blown away when I heard about this, when I'm like, of course, the math finally works. I never imagined we'd be 1,000x cheaper to go to space. So, I think one thing, Elon Musk, controversial guy, but like one thing he said really stuck with me. He said, technology only moves forward if you push it forward. Like in 1969, we went to the moon. And then in the 80s, we had the space shuttle and we could only go to orbit. And then 20 years later, the space shuttle was shut down and we couldn't go anywhere. And you have to keep pushing forward. Otherwise, technology actually moves backwards. And in history, you've got like, we used to build pyramids and then we forgot how. And we used to build cathedrals and then we forgot how. And so it's always been this like, I was like, yeah, that's exactly right. Things trend towards, worse if you don't make it better. And so it's always
And
been a
and
thing
it's the
for me.
commercialization too, right? Of space, meaning,
Yeah.
SpaceX has reusable rockets, which people are like, no way. But obviously, if you find a way, it'll eventually happen.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It's very cool what's happening right now. And I do think we'll make it to Mars and we'll make it work. And I think it's important. Like Elon always says, for the survival of the species, like there's always this small chance we get hit by a giant asteroid. If we are on 2 planets, we're a better chance of surviving.
Okay, so one quick question before we get into your background story. These data centers,
Mhm.
the intent of the data centers is to support what we're doing here on Earth, or is it to support space travel and that mission to Mars, or both?
So there's 2 kinds of AI workloads. One is training and one is inference. Inference is like when you're chatting with ChatGPT and it gives you answers, but training is like a very intense process where they're like trying to create weights in the models, processing basically all the knowledge on the internet. And so what's interesting about the training is like you need to upload the data once and you process it for days and days and days. And so the communication link would be, okay, it might take a while to upload to space. And then you can upload the increments, new knowledge. Don't need a lot of bandwidth for that. But what you do need is a ton of power and a lot of cooling. And so it's the training part. It's supporting what's on Earth, but those models can be then shipped into space as well.
All right, so let's rewind the clock. You did give us a little hint about your, you know, experience and interest as a child, but kind of let's expand that a little bit more. Like, eventually you ended up at UNH studying mechanical engineering. So were you deeply involved with computers and obviously space, as you mentioned?
Yeah, sure. So I was born into a military family in Virginia of 5 siblings, and I have 3 half siblings older than I am. So I'm like 6 of 8, which is I call it my Borg designation, like 7 of 9, I'm 6 of 8.
Six of
Uh,
eight.
yeah. So, we moved to Germany when I was a kid and then back to New Hampshire. That's where my father landed when he retired. I was always a super curious kid, very shy. One of my I got a computer from my uncle when I was 9. He
What was
drove
it?
up. It was an Apple III. He was a researcher, and he drove up from Springfield in his extremely loud Volkswagen diesel. Like I knew he was coming. Every time he'd come to visit, I could hear the car coming, like half a mile away. Right? But he brought this like several boxes. It was a giant thing with a green screen, and I was just I spent so much time on that thing. There was books that came with it. I taught myself basic. At one point we connected to CompuServe with a modem, 300 baud. It was just so fascinating to me, this idea of computation and how it worked. And it's always been in the background for me.
And then the decision to study mechanical engineering at UNH.
Yeah. So, I always been, interested in building. I wanted to go into aerospace. At the time, I couldn't. UNH didn't have an aerospace program, so it was the closest thing. But I studied mechanical engineering there. Was lucky to kind of get picked to work on a research project on the CATSAT satellite. So it was a student-built satellite project at UNH. So I got experience working on that, designing components. Eventually, left UNH, went to my master's in Colorado, which had a real aerospace program. Ended up at getting a job at Lockheed Martin, which was writing flight software for launch vehicles. So I'm like 23 years old, working on the flight software team, launching rockets into space. It was so fascinating. And
That's
what
so
was
cool.
odd was that it was right next to the rocket factory was on the same site. So when you were like feeling unmotivated, you could just take a walk to the rocket factory and see these people in clean suits building components. And then if you wanted to test your software, you could go to the flat rocket where they had all the components laid out in a room, and you run the software and it would like move the engines and the actuators and open valves. And it was just an awesome experience as a young person. But I was like, wow, this is so cool. But then it led me back to grad school because I realized I just wanted to understand more how stuff worked. And ended up to back in it. Yeah. So yeah, just continuing the story a bit, I ended up took another job in Boston working on Chandra Space Telescope. Then ended up applying to grad school. I went to Princeton first, where I worked on space optics to like detect planets. Really awesome work. Did some fundamental work there that's now kind of baked into some of the planet finding missions, where they're trying to detect this like faint reflection of a planet rotating around stars with telescopes in space. But I ended up, because I'm just interested in so many things, transferring up to MIT to work on a grant on Mars missions. And that's kind of where my tech story starts to begin.
Right.
I'll pause for a second. Rambling.
Yeah. So you worked on 13 space missions from my research. So what were those?
Yeah. So the first one was CATSAT, and then I did the Chandra Space Telescope, was an X-ray space telescope, and then I did I think 10 launches at Lockheed Martin, and then I worked on the Mars missions at MIT.
So what were the Mars missions?
So I was lucky to get involved in this. There was a big grant. It was President Bush he made some declaration that we're going to go to Mars. He gave all these grants to, I think 11 different groups, including MIT. And so we were in a competition to see who could do the best job designing this. It was a large enough grant. There was like 10-ish students funded by it. And we had this idea, which is sort of why we should try to use computation to design, to explore every possible Mars mission. Because the traditional thing is you pick up one of the aerospace engineering books and you just start designing components and you come up with something that works and iterate around that. Instead, we created software that would explore every possibility at once. And so we had this sort of AI inspired, at the time, early AI, where you would assemble a space mission piece by piece, and every time there was a decision, like different kind of components or fuel or trajectories, we created a branch and then started exploring that other branch. So we would just keep creating more and more possibilities and exploring them. And if something became infeasible, we would cut that branch off. We modeled this with Java threads, which turns out was a very inefficient way to do it, but it worked. And we generated software that generated 1,162 different Mars missions that were all feasible. And then we were able to understand, how do you reduce cost? How do you reduce risk? How do you increase science? And then when it came time to present to NASA, they had a bunch of one mission. We got on stage and said we designed 1,100 missions, and we understand that incredibly comprehensively because of our approach. And they were like, whoa, this is new. This is never been done before. So,
Right.
anyway, like went really well, but then I ended up finishing up my work right in the financial crisis. There were no jobs. Everything was shutting down. So my colleague Sandro and I and our professor decided, hey, Ed Crawley, let's try to start a company based on these ideas. And that's how DataXu was born. We have a hammer, we're looking for a nail, which is exactly how you're not supposed to start a company.
Yeah. But it's a really good hammer.
Yeah.
And like you said, it was early. I mean, this is, according to LinkedIn, 2004 to 2008.
Yeah.
So you look at today, what's happening with AI and machine learning, like that's what you were doing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We were like, it wasn't called anything back then. It wasn't called big data. That wasn't a word. We were like, we want to make decisions over a very big, space of data using math. And, that's a long way to say big data, or AI. But that's what we were doing. We just didn't have a name for it yet.
So you had 1,100 potential mission opportunities, but you simulated 35 billion to get to the 1,100, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So there was like a potential 35 billion, but vast majority of those were impossible. And so they get pruned as you go. And so leading to DataXu, obviously we found that, and we were looking for somewhere to apply this kind of technology, like how to, some situation where you've got to make a rapid decision when you have a lot of different possibilities. We ended up exploring things like airline replanning after storms. We did finance and healthcare applications. We actually built an airline rescheduling software demo for American Airlines, and flew down to Texas and showed them at headquarters, and their team scrutinized it we were there presenting for an entire day. And they were like, okay, it's interesting, but you guys really should think twice about getting into airlines because it's a terrible business with tight margins and you need FAA approval. So we can't pay you for 2 years, even if this is good. So I'm just telling you, scientists decide to think twice about this. And so we flew home and we're like, we got to find something else. So we ended up with one of our co-founders with Bruce Journey, who was in media, and he's like started making intros to people and having conversations. At the time, everyone thought online advertising was done, but really there was a ton of possibility. This seems absurd to me to think it was done back then, but that's what the feeling was. Like, Google has this wrapped up, there's nothing to do. We got into these discussions about real-time bidding, which was called something like, it had some crazy name, like it was the ability to bid on ad opportunities before they were displayed in real time. But it was called like proxy insertion ad interception technology or some crazy name.
That's beautiful.
And so there was talk of doing this, and there was skepticism. I think Google said, well, we're thinking of building out a way for people to bid, but we're not going to do it unless there's, buyers willing to buy this way. And we said, we'll be one of the buyers. And that's how we got into AdTech.
So that was, you were talking to Google. So you were talking to Google about this problem, and they were the ones, hey, we need buyers. So you're like, we'll get buyers.
Yeah. So the early players were like Google and AppNexus and Yahoo and others. So we got involved early, one of the first on the buy side, building a buy side technology, and you know, things took off.
All right, so how did you get started from there, though? Like, it's like, okay, we've got this, like you said, we've got a nail, right? But we're trying to solve this with this potential market that programmatic marketing wasn't a term yet. You just mentioned some other crazy term. So
Yeah.
how do you start to build this, you know, the tech, the platform, the buyers, the agencies, the customers? Like,
So we started talking this talk track with our potential investors at the time. We had raised some seed money based on Ed Crawley's reputation and, smart guys from MIT doing something smart, which was crazy. I was like blown away that people would write checks for that, but they did. And so Bruce Jarney started making these intros. We ended up meeting Mike Baker. This is early on. And Mike was called in to kind of do diligence on, and he had a background at Pocket and Nokia. And he got involved as a investor and then a board member and then executive chairman. And then, when we got to the back then A round, now people talk about A round as far along, but back A round used to be the first fundraising because A first, right? There was no pre-seed, seed A, seed B. It was A. He became our CEO. As we transitioned into AdTech, Mike really latched on, and that formed the team. So we had Bruce Jarney and Mike with backgrounds in advertising, and then we had Sandro and I really with backgrounds and Gerard Keating as well in technology and engineering. So,
all right, so this was a $6 million Series A
yeah,
with Flybridge, Atlas, which became Accomplice, and Menlo
mhm.
Ventures.
Yeah, that's right. Menlo joined Series B. Yeah, and so we over time, I mean, we were just go. Um, we were we started growing. I think at one point we got fifth fastest growing company in America, Inc. magazine. It was crazy. Like things were going really well. I think we eventually ended up selling to Roku in 2019, where the technology continues to operate their ad stack.
All right, so there's a story of how you got there, though. So building this out, proving the market, getting the agencies, the brands, like how did that come to fruition? Because this is a new sector that was in unfamiliar territory.
Yeah. So I was lucky to be associated with people that knew the space and had connections. So, we built out, and it was fascinating for me. I had no idea how this all worked. Let's say Bruce and Mike and the people he hired built out a whole go-to-market piece of the company where we built up relationships with agencies. Our first agency relationship was Havas. We worked with a local team here in Boston. Nate Woodman was there. Ed Montes was involved, who eventually joined us as our CRO at one point. But yeah, it was challenging. I think though, one of the things I'd love to cover though, I ended up eventually working for the trade desk, and maybe it's interesting to talk about that contrast.
Well, yeah, because the trade desk was scaling at the same time. They were probably your primary competition out there. Is that?
So the interesting thing was that, I mean, you had Brian Stempek on like a couple months
I
ago.
did. Yeah.
And Brian was early number 8 at Trade Desk and built out their revenue organization. So when Trade Desk came on the scene, they were like kind of a late arrival. We didn't really think about them much for years. But something they did was really interesting and different from the rest of the industry. Yeah, I think DataXu and other contemporaries like MediaMath were all pushing really hard on automation and performance. And we had all forecasts that media agencies would go away, and automation would take over, and all this business would go direct to brand. Trade Desk had a different take on it, or at least maybe, the way I understand it after working there for a while is they saw a gap where when they talked to the customers, which they thought of as agencies, not brands, the agencies felt kind of nervous about this. So they said, we're going to align with you, align with the agencies. We're going to build tools for you. We're not going to get in your way. We're going to be your
Yeah.
partner and help you make money. And over time, as we had our ups and downs and customers would churn or agencies would get nervous that we're trying to like take their job, those customers would migrate to Trade Desk and never come back. So
Yeah. Like
it was like a
now,
slow vacuum where they were slowly taking customers that churned and then keeping them.
and that is the story he told. It was like we had a different philosophy and we supported the agencies and they, we were partners. So that's absolutely uh, the story he told. So
Yeah.
um, now, so real time bidding. So you're, partnering up with, like you said, Google, Yahoo, and App Nexus or whatever. So this is a scale where it was like 1 million internet events every second. So conceptually, like you take this platform technology, whatever you want to call it, that's focused on traveling to Mars, applying it to programmatic advertising. So, like, what's happening under the hood to make this all like worthwhile?
So what's happening under the hood? It's so each ad opportunity. So people talk about ads as like in CPM, as cost per thousand. Like like a a, a very targeted ad might be $5 or $10 cost per thousand, meaning it's like a cent or half a cent for an individual ad, meaning you can't spend a lot of compute on an individual opportunity. So you have to be super, super efficient. So what's happening is that the auction kicks off. It gets forwarded to companies like DataXu or Trade Desk or many others. I think there's probably 80 plus bidders out there now. Like you may end up with 80 people seeing that opportunity and trying to respond within 100 milliseconds. So like a blink of an eye. So we took those opportunities in and then quickly routed them to a server that would store any data we have on the user. So we had two stages: request routers and ad matchers. So like it would come in with this highly optimized network, go to the request router, we'd augment or clean up or reject things that are completely non-interesting to us, then forward it to a particular server that might have user number 12372, some anonymized number, which actually maps to Keith's client's browser. And we might return an ad for something you'd be interested in, like podcasting software, for example.
Yeah. Or a
Uh,
car.
yeah, but we'd have to make sure we, track frequency and you track performance. And what was different about DataXu is that we had very sophisticated algorithms in line. It was based on the technology and ideas from MIT that we don't have just lookup tables. We could actually calculate sort of the probability that you'd be interested for many different opportunities in a very short amount of time and then pick the best one for you.
Got it. Okay. So you went on to raise multiple rounds of venture funding. It was like $11 million Series B, $27 million Series C. I saw an article in 2009 where Mike Baker gave a TechCrunch 50 presentation, and I couldn't find the video, unfortunately. I don't know if it's still out there somewhere, but I wanted to watch it. But the judges were Marissa Mayer, Paul Graham, Tony Hsieh, and Mark Andreessen. I was like, wow. Like what an elite group of people to pitch this
I know.
concept to.
I know it's crazy. I mean, that was the group at the time. I mean, we were really, really hot back then. It's like we had videos, like we blended in rocket launches and all kinds of things into the mix, just amping up our sort of pedigree of aerospace and science and math. But what an incredible panel. I wonder, yeah, I mean, Tony is passed, sadly, but to get that group together again would be incredible as a demo panel.
All right, so obviously with those venture rounds, you were scaling the company. Because one of the things that I remember about DataXu is that you guys really cared about the culture of the company, right? It was like and the people you brought in, like so what did you learn, in that hyper growth scaling time frame of hiring and culture and building and running
Yeah.
fast and furious?
So many people from, that are DataXu alums, I run into them from time to time and they tell me how I've had like 2, 3 jobs since then and nothing's ever been the same. And I just really miss what we had. I'm like, I do too. It's like we had this great culture. Um, and I didn't even really know because it's the first company I built that it was so great. But the idea was that everyone has, everyone's ideas are equally valid and we'll listen to everyone. And so we had these like innovation days, which were twice a year where we kind of flatten the company and people form teams and they would pitch different ideas, like prototype and pitch. And it could be about the product or people or our process. Like we had one group like who wanted us to revamp our snacks, so they called the OS project. And like, why that? He said, well, all the good snacks end in OS, like Doritos and Oreos, and Tostitos. He's like, we need more OS snacks, and like we ended up buying more OS snacks. But we had a massive number of ideas. But it wasn't that we had innovation days where we ended up. I kept track of all the ideas, and like 40% of the ideas from those events ended up in the company, which was incredible. But it was this everyday sort of culture where we talked to everyone and listened to them. I spent a lot of time like in the office. I saw someone who looked worried or eyebrows furl, and would just talk to them. Hey, what's going on? They're like, oh, this thing is running so slow, or this is so inefficient. And then we talk about, well, how do you think we could make it better? And I'm like, okay, let's do it. Like, and so we had a great culture where we respected each other, and yet, we didn't think all ideas had to come from the top. They came from everywhere. And we also sort of emphasized building people up. We hired a lot of junior people and, built them. We didn't try to go out and hire super senior people. We did sometimes, you have to sometimes, but we spent a lot of time trying to figure out what are people really passionate about? What do they want to do? How do we help them get there? So we built a really, really good culture, very driven, very smart.
Now, you had mentioned the company was later acquired by Roku. Like, what was that process like, actually going through that M&A process, and then what was your role post acquisition?
Yeah, it was super painful. I would say, like, the diligence process was hard because we couldn't really tell anyone what was going on, and so it was small group, like heavily involved, preparing materials, answering questions, finding documents. I think at the last couple of weeks, I had Sandro and I kind of locked ourselves in rooms. We had to find like thousands and thousands of documents, that contracts and receipts, and we're searching email archives, everything we could find, and answering questions back and forth with Roku lawyers. It was crazy painful, but it was exciting too. And at the time we were this company in Boston. Roku was like worth, it's a public company, worldwide known name, really talented engineers interviewing us. It was really fascinating. The transition was a little bit tough. People were like, how do I fit in here? I think the culture was a little bit different. We were aligned in a lot of ways, but Roku has this culture that's really like, we expect you to be on your A game at all times. Think of this like a professional sports team. If you're not on your A game, we may say thank you and give you severance. Or if something comes along and we no longer need your services, we'll also give you severance. And that expectation is just set up front. It's not a family. It's a hardworking company that pays at 75th percentile. And I think that, I liked that they were very upfront about it. But it was different from DataXu, where it's like, okay, if you're struggling, we're going to like work with you and we're going to try to figure out what's a better role for you and how do we
Right.
make you successful. And it's not that we never laid anyone off, we did. But we would certainly put a lot of effort into trying to figure out, is it the wrong role? Like, do you need more mentorship? How do we maximize who you are? I think Roku's more like not working out,
Time to
go
go.
somewhere else. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. But it was, they transitioned me into product role, which was a big change. It was it came down to the last couple of weeks. They're like, okay, we want you to go into product management. And I'm like, but I'm a CTO. They're like, we have plenty of engineering leaders. We don't have people that know AdTech. We need you to be a product manager. That's the deal. And I was like, they're like, you can not come with this and not get your retention bonus, or you can be a product manager. And I'm like, okay, I guess I'm a product manager. Like, so I had to learn how to be a product manager. I'd been around product managers, but I never was one. And it took me a good full year of, trying to figure it out to get up to speed. And I think I've never really been as good a product manager. I mean, I had a lot of strategic ideas, but like it's the day-to-day skills of a PM, I didn't develop over 10 years. I had to learn rapidly.
Yeah. And that was the role that you held at the trade desk too, right?
That's true. Yeah. I ended up liking it. I think it was a good bridge to a more sort of business oriented role. So as a CTO at DataXu, I was heavily focused on the back end and the algorithms. I would sometimes get involved in the customer facing things, but mostly I was like trying to make the system work better. As a product manager, I was trying to make the business work better, which was a bridge between technology and the front end. And so I liked that. It seemed more impactful to me. And I continued down that path at Trade Desk.
All right. What are you working on now?
So I've made a huge change in that I am working on a technology for communication. So Orbit.me is the name, and the product is working on messaging overwhelm. And so this is that feeling you get when you're getting bombarded by messages from iMessage and WhatsApp and Signal and Telegram. And then the average American has 4 or 5 of these, 2 to 3 email addresses. And what we found in our research, and because we are also in this class, parents, they have on top of that team apps, school apps, healthcare apps for themselves and for their kids, for their spouse. And if oftentimes this generation that I'm in is taking care of their parents as well. And so you're tracking 10 to 15 sources of messages. And what Orbit does is bring it together. And so the reason it's called Orbit is we organize all the information from the messages into themes, and the themes are called orbits. So like you can have your parenting orbit, your work orbit, your planning a trip orbit, your selling my house orbit, or like hobbies. And what the platform does is bring all the information together, tell you about key updates and to-dos and events, and give you insights. And it does it all cross-channel. So you think about it as like a dashboard for your life, cross-channel, real-time, up-to-date, and actionable for regular people. It's not targeted initially at work use cases, although it's certainly useful. I've been using it for work. But it's targeted at people that are just bombarded by all these different asks. I could say I've been thinking about working in this space for 10 years. I had some crazier ideas. We settled on this one. I was inspired by working at the trade desk, working long hours, sitting in meetings. My phone would be ping, 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 ping all day, all these simultaneous things going on. At the end of the day, I'm like, I don't know what's what. I don't know where I'm supposed to be. And it's like, oh, it was in a thread, or I texted you. Like you're supposed to pick up
where
where am I going, or something changed. And And it's like, okay, scroll through, 1,000 messages. It's just unreasonable. And so I wanted to build something that fixed that, and helped me not have to be on my phone all the time.
I'm sure you evangelize this idea and everyone's like, yes. like
Yeah.
everybody lives it. I mean, if you have kids and yeah, like you're that sandwich generation of aging parents and there's just so much going on. Yeah, it's tricky. And yeah, I, just my work persona, I resisted Slack forever because I'm like, I can't do another channel of communication, because I have multiple emails because there's VentureFizz, there's Legacy Decero of a search firm that I was running, so I still might monitor that. But LinkedIn became more of a messaging thing, which I was just like, no, but that it just has. So I was just like, I can't add another layer of messaging, and obviously I'm deep in Slack now because I couldn't. But it was just like it's just too much. And then when you layer in the personal level of just like you said, the sports apps, Team Snap and these things, it's just like, it's too much going on. So I like how you're bringing it all together. Now, the tricky thing is you're building a consumer app, which
Yeah.
that's, you talk to people building consumer apps and that's another circumstance.
It is. It is. It's one of the early pitches I did to a VC that invests in consumer. He heard my pitch and he was like, "Well, what category are you in the App Store?" And I was like, I don't know." He's like, "You don't even know the categories? Like, how are you going to succeed? Because there's an art to like, getting high ranking in each category and blah blah blah." He started just lecturing at me about it. And I was like, "Okay, I've got some things to learn here."
Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, it is a transition for me. And, that was really useful feedback because then I started studying, okay, what are the categories in the App Store and what's the difference between them? And like, what's it take to grow in each? And like, the beauty of it is like combination of search and AI. I'm able to get up to speed pretty quickly and start to understand these concepts and understand why they're difficult and understand the kind of people I'll need to associate with to help me. So I'll get through
You
that.
didn't you
Love the
didn't
feedback.
know AdTech. You didn't know AdTech, but Bruce Journey and Mike Baker, you brought in the people that knew that space and knew the right people to connect with to then build a company.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll get through it. Yeah, it's true. I'm not experienced in that. What I am experienced in is building highly scaled efficient computational systems, and that's what it's at its core. In order to be in business, though, we need customers. We need it to be popular, so we need it to scale. So we need both, and I deeply appreciate the need for both. But yeah, it's a big challenge for me. It's a big change.
Yeah, that's part of the fun. So your team, so it's Maximo from DataXu
Yep.
and Sasha from Roku, who is the director of UX there,
Yep.
from what I gathered. So it's just the three of you right now?
So we have also a software developer friend of mine who's doing data science and a couple advisors. So yeah, it's a smallish group and a bunch of people just sort of helping on the side with advice. We're bootstrapped at the moment. We're building hardcore. I think Maximo, we're waiting a long time for Maximo to be able to exit he sold his company to Blend 360 and then he's transitioned out at the end of August. And since then we've been like really, really grinding to build product. Maximo was our I hired him as an intern at DataXu back in 2008 when he was a Fulbright scholar at Northeastern. He ended up kind of leading our machine learning engineering squad at DataXu and then building his own consulting software, DevOps and AI and machine learning consulting company out of Uruguay. He's also a professor down there. He's an amazing musician, amazing person. And I'm so thrilled that I realized we've known each other for like 17 years. And I'm glad we get to keep working together. Sasha was at Roku. He was hired to be the UX leader, my counterpart there. But he was previously at Google very early on working on He was UX lead for Google Meet, Google Plus, and Google Wallet. So, I've got the UX leader that's scaled things to hundreds of millions or billions of people, um, and a, seasoned AI leader on the team. It's coming together. It's coming together.
What's your point of view on building products now, in the world of cursor, lovable, vibe coding, prototyping, but those aren't
Yeah.
things that you can necessarily throw into production. So you gotta still, get it code ready for production. What has that experience been like in comparison to others?
So it's been awesome. I mean, I think when we started DataXu, we were trying to do distributed computing, and there was like nothing out there to help you. It was like a dark art, and you had to figure it out. Now that stuff is like, it's crazy for me to say, but it's easy to do distributed computing. There's so many libraries and techniques, and it's like people can run giant analyses with like a couple lines of code. Um, what's hard, like AI is the new thing. Like learning how to tame the beast that is AI is really been challenging. I think I started really banging away at this problem in May. And at first I was like getting involved with Cursor and Lovable. I've evolved now. I'm using Claude Code, and it's higher, I get higher quality outputs, but it's less intuitive. Sometimes it's random, but what I'm finding is like it's moving so fast. I spend Saturdays and Sunday mornings watching YouTube videos and reading blogs and keeping up on X, trying to like see what is the latest advice, and then I try to implement it. And so it's crazy. It's crazy how fast it's moving, but I'm also learning at a faster rate than I've ever learned, I think, like because I encounter something and then I can work with AI to like try it out so quickly. I'm like, oh, I saw this idea. How would I implement that? And then it's like, what gives me like 10 steps? I'm like, okay, let's go. Let's try it. And I'm like, I can't imagine how fast DataXu would have moved if we had this. I think things are evolving. I think it's just a really exciting time to start a company. It's scary because you feel like you may get lapped, like somebody might run faster than you. Um, but also super exciting because I feel like I can do so much.
It is a crazy time. I was talking to a VC a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, do you think about making an investment over the past couple of years that's already gonna get lapped? It's because things are moving so quickly. Before, you'd probably have a nice little window of time to figure it out and get there and go to market. But now it's just like things are coming up quicker, faster, and it's just it's a crazy, crazy time.
Yeah, it's I worry about it all the time. Am I moving fast enough? Are we going fast enough? And I know the team feels the pressure. I'm trying to, keep the pace, because ironically, I'm building a company to help free up time for people by making them less attached to their computers and phones. But like under pressure to build it, I'm very attached to my computer.
The irony.
It's like
I
rolling.
love but I love the concept to pull people away from their devices and to be able to focus on what really matters. That's a movement. I had someone on my podcast, founder of Lawak, that just raised their seed funding, and it's a guided tourist app. If you're in Paris and you want to do different tours instead of connecting with a group tour or just walking around aimlessly, you have your earbuds in. It's keeping you away from your phone, and it's customized, and anyways, it's a whole thing. But I like it because it's pulling people away from their phones, which is, I think, important. Now, the role of a software engineer in the world of AI, how do you see that evolving? Because people are like, oh, we're not going to need as many, or the roles changing. Like, how do you view
Yeah.
that?
I think the worst advice ever given in 2025 was like saying that you shouldn't go into computer science. I think that is
Yeah, because you were
really,
hearing that. People were like,
yeah,
oh,
it's so dumb. Like, I think that the approach needs to change. Like, if you went into computer science to learn how to write syntax, I think that's dead because AI writes syntax really well. you need to understand the syntax, but the job actually, software engineer is actually becoming engineer. Like I think earlier curriculums, like you were learning how to write algorithms, but now the job is bumped up to designing systems and not necessarily like the fiddly small details of each sub part of it. But like we're finding a lot of success using code generation now, spending a ton of time designing, architecting, writing up requirements, like with AI assisted, but like thinking about it really carefully how things are going to work. And then we generate the code and then we review it and it works pretty well. So like I think software engineering changes from, okay, you've got to write these functions to you got to design how the system's going to work. It's more of an architecting, designing, and system thinking role going forward. I think some people are getting caught off guard in that because maybe they were just really good at writing syntax. But like, I think like computer science curriculums are shifting because the students coming in are doing code generation already. So they're going to pop out. I think the young generation is going to be AI code gen native. I think they're going to be really good. I think there's a lot of slop being generated. I think it changes. You still need very experienced designers and architects. I think senior engineers are best positioned, people that are kind of mid-career, to take advantage right now. But there's still a need for people that understand how it
Right.
works.
Yeah,
It's like, it's
exactly.
crazy to think. It's crazy that people said don't study computer science. That's just so ridiculous to me.
And it's going to affect every function, product management and user experience and sales and marketing, but you still need the people to do the jobs. It's going to make them more efficient and maybe, more powerful, superhuman, right? But it's not going to go away. And maybe you do need less, but there's going to be more companies building things because there's just ample opportunity. So just an interesting time. All right, top 3 apps you can't live without. Can't be your own app. Slack, email, or calendar.
So I would say like the app I use all the time right now is Claude Code. Like I know maybe that'll change, but I mean, I really love it. And I'm starting to do more and more different kinds of projects in it because I like how it interacts with other tools and all that. It's really, really cool. And it's so much fun. And every time I have to work on a project outside of it, I'm like sad. Like I want to go back to just, it's like a friend. We recently kind of started using Linear, which Linear is like project management. It's like a
Yeah,
Jira replacement. And
yeah.
I hated Jira for so long, that I thought I just wasn't into managing projects. But I've been using Linear. I actually like it. And part of the reason is probably because I can use AI to like clean things up. Whereas I couldn't do that in Jira. Maybe Jira does that now. I don't know. But I'm like, I actually like it. I think the third thing would be some combination of news. I spend a ton of time, I'm on X not because I'm into like conservative stuff, but that's where I find the latest thoughts and ideas on, and trends on AI and coding and startups. And I spend a lot of time there, and that leads me to YouTube. It leads me also to LinkedIn and other places, but yeah, I would say that would be a third one. If that was taken away and I didn't have this feed, I would have to find it somewhere else.
All right, how about a podcast or book recommendation for entrepreneurs?
So, so the first thing that comes to mind, when I was sort of going through some dark times, like lamenting that DataXu wasn't a public company, and I never made it, and feeling bad about myself, somebody shipped me the book The Gap and the Gain. It's like Dan Sullivan's book, and it sort of changed my whole perspective on being an entrepreneur. He describes how he coaches a lot of entrepreneurs, and they all feel like crap all the time because they always feel like they didn't achieve enough. And
That's fact.
they're like, oh, I only made $100 million and I should have made $1 billion. And like they make $1 billion, I should have made $10 billion, and it's like It's just constant feeling like crap permanently. And, pro athletes, other high achievers are like this, a lot of them. There's a big philosophy out there, like you need that you need that drive, like
Sure.
I know like another entrepreneur in Boston who feels really bad that his last company only sold for $1 billion and now he's like angry and he's trying to build a bigger one. And I'm like, but this,
Unicorns are a dime a dozen, $1 billion exits.
yeah. So like this book argues like it's a mindset thing. And it's like you don't need to live in that gap mindset where you're always like measuring yourself by what you don't have and what you didn't achieve. And instead you can think and frame everything in terms of gain, and that can motivate you forward. Rather than like, I don't have this, I need to get it. It's more of like, I felt so awesome getting here. What if I go farther? And there's a small percentage of people that live that way, and they're very happy people and successful too. So it's like DataXu was an amazing accomplishment, maybe 1 in 1,000, 1 in 1,000,000 sort of accomplishment. Didn't
Yep.
go public, didn't make $1 billion. But so many people worked so hard to try to get to that level, and we did. And that felt awesome. And I want to keep
Yeah.
going and keep doing it.
Outside of work, what do you like to do for fun?
So during the pandemic, got into cycling. So I have a gravel bike and I do a lot of cycling on weekends, skiing, spending time with my daughter. But yeah, I mean, I'm reading, working a lot too much, but I've been exercising so much more. I'm finding as I've aged, I need to be working out like every day to keep up.
Yep, I can relate to that too. So, well, Bill, thanks so much for taking the time to walk us through your background story. Obviously, all the great stories along the way with company building, DataXu, and wishing you, lots of success with Orbit.me. So, thanks for all the advice as well.
Thanks, Keith. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.